Hello, welcome. I'm SilverSongbird,
I'm SilentSwords.
and together we're the L Theorists, and welcome to our pilot episode. Today we're going to be diving into the downfall of Olympia. If it's your first time listening, welcome, but if you're viewing this from the future, welcome back. But at the moment, we have to go way back to April 15th, 1912, where 1,500 people were killed in the sinking of the Titanic. But was it really the Titanic that sunk?
Many theorists today actually believe that the ship, the Olympic, was the real ship that sunk. Okay, so
In this
my
case,
take...
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
In this case, my question is, why would they fake the sinking of the Titanic? Or in this case, why wouldn't they just say that it was a different ship?
I mean, well, at first probably because like they probably had some reason. Maybe the Titanic wasn't finished or on schedule or something, you know. I think that's definitely possible, and the Olympic was just going to pose until they finished the Titanic. Yeah, then I'm assuming it'd be used for something now, then something presumably top secret. Or maybe just the government doesn't know, and what the government doesn't know they can't release.
It's possible, but there's also been a lot of conspiracies around the actual shipwreck, that there's something inside that we're not seeing.
Oh, interesting. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Because I've not read up on those yet.
We're talking like there might be something in the cargo hold, or I don't know, but a friend of mine was actually talking to me about this a while ago, and she ended up saying that she read somewhere that it's possible that there's a lot of valuable things like jewelry, gold, stuff like that, because first class passengers and everything, the
Well, I
richer
mean, yeah, for
people.
sure there's going to be some of that, right? Because when you're going on a ship that's the pinnacle of technology at its time, you're going to bring some valuable stuff, right?
Yeah.
Presumably people were going to be there to have a good time, right? I'm
Hmm.
going to bring my nice gold watch to show off, right?
Hmm.
If I had a gold watch, I'm broke, so I don't have
But
gold watches.
think about it. When these people were leaving the ship during the evacuation, they couldn't bring all their stuff with them. That stuff is still probably in the cargo hold.
Well, I wouldn't say in the cargo hold, right? I'm not gonna set my laptop. Well, they didn't have laptops, but like I'm not gonna set something that I really need with me in the cargo hold. So I'd say it's probably scattered around the ship, you'd think, right?
Good point, good point. I don't exactly know where I was going with that, but anyway,
I mean,
I'm still questioning why the switch was needed.
uh, um, I actually want to talk about the crash for a second here.
Oh,
Can we
yeah,
talk about
go for
how
it.
does an iceberg sink a ship?
There was actually a study done on that. During a picture of the okay, during the construction of the Titanic, there was a picture of kind of a cross section of it where there was, I want to say it was the furnace. I don't know what it's called, but basically there's all
The
this
boiler room?
coal. Yes, the boiler room. There's all this coal stored right in the boiler room, which
But
isn't
why is that in the
exactly the
front of
best
the ship?
idea. And it was
Oh,
kind of towards the area where the iceberg hit the Titanic. There's a
see,
theory there that some fire jumped from the furnace onto the coal and caused a massive fire below deck, but nobody knew. And that's what weakens the metal enough for the iceberg to pierce through.
okay. See, I could see that happening, but also, why would the boiler room be in the front of the ship,
I have no clue.
not not the back? See, I don't claim to be like a boating expert or anything like that.
I think
I've
it
been
may
on
have,
like
I think that one may have not been the boiler room. I'm pretty sure it might have been supplying heat to the rest of the ship.
like advanced heat
Like
system
like a
like
weird
that.
heating system, I guess. I think.
I guess that, but well, the point I want to talk about this was is the Olympia was supposedly in bad condition, right? It had some metal fix-ups, if I remember correctly. So it's possible that they could have faked the sinking, and with it some potentially valuable cargo, right? That they don't want like exposed.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to say
So what you're
hidden
kind of saying
treasure.
here is that there was something on that ship that they were trying to get rid of here, right?
I think it's definitely something that we have to take into consideration of, like, yes, it's possible that accidents happen, and it's totally plausible that an iceberg did just bring down a ship on accident. But I think it's infinitely more likely that, I don't know whether it was staged and they didn't, but I believe there is something there that would indicate that they had to get rid of the ship, which would beg the question, why, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the Olympia wasn't a perfect ship. And so, like, the Olympia wasn't a perfect ship, right? But you could still use it in theory. So, like, I would
But then
assume
why
they
would they
might
use a
put
damaged ship?
to get rid of it. That's what I'm saying. I think they probably potentially put stuff on the tide, or not
The
the
Olympia?
Olympic.
The
It's the
Olympic?
Olympic,
Right.
yeah. But like, if it is the Olympic, I would assume they would put like stuff that they don't want found, right? Like, who knows, they could have been involved in some illegal stuff, and so this is a perfect way to get rid of evidence of that. You fake a sinking of the pinnacle of technology at the time and get rid of all your legal documents.
Do you think there may have been some sort of sabotage in it, though? Think about it. Why would you want to sink something so valuable and supposedly so advanced?
Well, the
Obviously, if it was
Titanic
damaged,
was,
yes, but kind of just think about it for a second. It's probably not easy to sink even a damaged ship. Like, obviously, now we have things where we can just drop a bomb on it in the middle of the ocean or something.
called
Obviously, when the
depth
ship is empty.
charges. Um, well, I would agree that it's unlikely, but I think it's definitely something that we have to think about, you know, just like some food for thought.
Hmm. Moving
And I
forward.
mean,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead,
continue.
go ahead. No, go ahead, go ahead.
You ended up mentioning in the article that it could have been used, well, if it were still in use now, it would be used for illegal activity like smuggling drugs and illegal goods and such like that.
I think if it stayed out of government possession, right? If the Titanic, if it's still around, if it stayed out of government hands, it would probably be used for something like that, piracy, smuggling, etc. Um, but
Wait, so the sink, oh my gosh. So the staging of the crash would put the Titanic off the radar, meaning that you could use it without any problem.
yeah, um, but I think it'd be hard for the Titanic to be around and not have some government that has found it yet. I mean, you, you're gonna have
Now,
so Titanic's a big ship. You're not just gonna miss it if you're sailing around, right?
I mean, you got a point.
And so if the government have eyes and ears everywhere, it'd be pretty hard to miss it because it is, as much as you want to say it's a stealth ship, now that most people presume that it's gone, it's still a big ship. And so I would
But
assume
it's also smaller than modern cruise lines.
tis
Like
true,
a
tis
lot
true,
smaller.
tis true, but it's still big enough where the government with their eyes and ears everywhere would probably find it, you know?
I mean, yes, that's a good point, but there's also been these massive ships that just kind of show up on the shores of some beach where some person just happens to see it. How do those not get discovered sooner?
I mean, maybe they are and we just don't know about it, you know? Like, so I think it'd be pretty hard for the government not to have their hands on the Titanic. And so I personally think they'd be used for some sort of illegal testing, probably like, I don't think it'd be explosive, but I think the facilities would be used something maybe like biochemical, right? Like biological weaponry.
That's an idea. But if we really take into account everything about the Titanic and how it was built, can we just talk about how the different areas of the ship could each individually be turned into a different testing room for each individual subject?
So you're
That's
saying,
kind of creepy to think about.
so you're saying like in each room they would have one subject or one thing of interest?
It's an idea, but
Yeah.
also if we really kind of take this into account, why wouldn't they just build a new ship and not tell the public?
Yeah, the Titanic would have to have some quirk about it, right?
Right.
And I mean, it's totally possible as well that they used it for a while it was still the pinnacle of technology, and then since they've stopped using it, right?
I'm pretty sure it sank on its maiden voyage.
Pardon?
It sank on its maiden voyage, I'm
I'm bad
sure.
with English. Explain.
Uh, the maiden voyage is defined as the first trip that a ship will take.
Okay.
Or, well,
So,
not even a ship, just a plane. You kind of get the idea.
yeah. So, I mean, the sinking of the Titanic, like the event as people know it, yeah, that was sunk on maiden voyage. But I think if we're saying that if the Titanic sinking was faked and it's really the Olympic that's sitting at the bottom of the ocean, um, I think it's possible that the government could have used the Titanic while it was still the best ship around until technology advanced. In sense, they have retired the or not in sense they've retired the Titanic.
But it's also possible that they could have hidden the fact that it was the quote maiden voyage because that's what people say, but what people say isn't always true.
Are you saying they could have used it before it sunk?
Mm-hmm. I'm saying that the Titanic may have been used for a decent amount of time and was maybe hiding information.
You're saying like they had government files on the Titanic?
It's possible, but since we don't have that information on hand, it's just an idea.
See, the I think the issue with me about thinking about that would be back then it was all still write paper pencil files. And so if let's say you accidentally run into an iceberg, there go all your files, right?
Yeah, but also they could have been kept somewhere else.
I think it's possible that the Titanic could have been used to transport files,
Hmm.
like sort of like what you're saying, like with government files, but sort of like sending a message,
True.
like a
But
ghost ship.
also, radio transmission was still a thing then. So
I
they
would
could be
agree.
relaying information from the Titanic back to the main base somewhere on land.
I think that's definitely an option, but I feel like at some point somebody just messing with their radio probably would have found that out, right? If that was a thing.
Good point.
So I think they'd probably use old-fashioned methods to, if they use the Titanic as a communicating device, right?
Hmm.
Um, just because like that, it would just work like that in general.
There's also this thing where if it was supposed to transport information or collect information, there's also this thing where you have a large ship and then you have a smaller ship tailing behind it or in front of it.
Like an escort, use the Titanic
Yeah,
as an escort.
kind of, yes. But my idea is that the smaller ship may have gone a little bit ahead, and as they said, the visibility was pretty bad the night that it sank. So it's possible that there was a smaller ship carrying the files that we're talking about here.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely an option. The other thing is if the Titanic was used before, I think an option that is possible is what if the Titanic was used as quote unquote warship, right? Like I know it was supposedly a luxury vehicle, but it's totally possible to tow like artillery onto that ship, right? And
Yeah,
just unload
definitely
it and
possible.
unload it.
I remember seeing something about how durable the walls of the ship were. So I feel like those could have withstood a decent amount of damage before
But
it would go down. So transportation of military items definitely is also a possibility.
yeah, but see, the issue with my like used as quote unquote warship theory is if it was getting shot at, right, the walls were quite sturdy, um, which is another reason actually. If I think about that, an iceberg would be able to pierce that, right?
Right.
Which is why I think it's the Olympic, which would have much thinner walls, especially after being used for much longer.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Do you have any other information on this ship?
I mean, I think there's definitely some very good reasons that it could be passed off as the Titanic, right? I don't have a whole ton of information on the Olympic, but I do know the Titanic, the quote unquote Titanic, didn't allow for public examination before they set sail, which is kind of suspicious. There's
That
also a
is actually
post
really suspicious.
for multiple reasons, right? Like,
You'd think that a ship, before it sets sail, it would actually let the people boarding see uh, things like the actual sturdiness of the ship, how comfortable it is, things like that before you actually got on the ship.
yeah. The other thing was there's a post on Reddit, I think in like 2016. Don't quote me on that. I could be completely wrong. That had a side by side picture of the Titanic and like the Titanic while it's being built, and the Titanic on its first voyage. And there's slight differences, and the Titanic in the second picture does very closely model the pictures that people are aware of the Olympic, which is also kind of suspicious. And the other thing that could contribute, English is hard, it would be the power of suggestion. So, oh my, the power of suggestion.
Explain a little bit on that.
Um, so it's the power of suggestion. If I say it's a duck and you don't know what it is, you're just going to assume it's a duck, right? So if the two ships closely model the other one, right? If everybody's saying it's Titanic, you have no reason to disbelieve them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think about it. These ships have very subtle minor differences, but if I'm standing 50 yards away and everybody just assumes it's going to be the Titanic, you have no reason to disprove that.
Yeah, but
Unless,
I also see no reason to lie about it.
I mean, well, there's probably a reason to lie about it. It's just something that we'd have to figure out, right? Go back through records and stuff.
Good point. But do you really think they'd have something this odd on records that the public could actually view?
I mean, that's a good point, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, the fact that the public has put this much together means that if you spend enough time on it, you could probably figure out why. And I mean, we've speculated quite a few theories already, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think another one that I think is going to come up mainly just because everybody seems to be in love with them would be alien tech on the boat.
That one's definitely an interesting theory that I really like, but I haven't researched enough into it. So, if you have any information to bring forward, maybe?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to point out that I feel like everybody it's immediately a suspicious building. It's an alien. I mean, Area 51, minorly suspicious government building. It's hiding aliens. Um, Speaking of Area 51, there's actually, I was listening to a podcast, funnily enough, and they were talking about this guy um, who like came out and said he was like a government worker who worked at Area 51 and confirmed there's alien technology. Um, and like, so he was talking about like spaceships that were completely silent, right? And they could take off and land vertically, right? So most planes we have like runways and we take off horizontally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this one just literally just lifted straight up out of the air,
And it's dead silent.
dead silent. You can't hear it. Um, and he said they had basically a precursor to like fingerprint scanning. He said in order to get into the building, you had to put your hand on like basically a flat surface, and there was a light so bright above it that there was a scanner below that could like see your bones. And so if your bone structure matched one in the system, it would let you in.
That's actually
And
really interesting.
and yeah, and the people on the podcast were talking about this. I don't know if this was true, but they were talking about saying like there was technology close to this design around that time, so that would be factually and era correct because this is back in like the 50s or something that this guy's talking about. And so this guy, he said like he got like scared um of like he didn't want to work there anymore.
Yeah, I don't blame the guy.
Right. I would get scared of aliens, right?
Yeah.
Aliens, terrifying. I mean, obviously, unless it's Chewbacca. Chewbacca is pretty big fur, big furry.
Ah, yes, we're
Um,
bordering nerdy territory now.
that's not important. Um, or the Ewoks. Ewoks are cute too. Anyway, but like I would freak out if aliens landed here too. And so supposedly he came out with all these details, and so the government removed his identity, which is why like nobody's able to track who this guy is, which raises a lot of debates of like, is this a false identity? Did this actually happen? Or is this guy just genuinely telling the truth?
Hmm. So kind of the same deal with the ship.
With like the Titanic.
Yeah, the switch.
Mhm. Yeah, saying of like the Titanic. I mean, it is similar. Like the Titanic's identity was removed when it sunk, right?
Hmm. And there's
Um,
no like telltale sign. And even if there was, the paint is probably completely worn away by now.
I mean, heck, they could have like taken spray paint can, give or take like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and you could have a completely new exterior on the Titanic.
You got a point, but I don't think spray paint would work. Okay, are we talking about the ship while it was in construction, or are we talking about the wreck itself?
We're talking about like the real Titanic, which would be alive. So in this discussion, the Olympic is the ship that sunk, and
And
the
the
Titanic
Titanic
has
is being
lived.
used for something else.
Yeah, it's totally plausible that after the sinking, or even during the sinking of the Titanic, it's totally possible that like they were just like spray paint and made the ship look totally different.
Then in that case, what about the witnesses? Do you think they
Of
may have seen anything, or is it just possible that this is just a weird idea that might not have any backing?
well, witnesses of what? Of the people that were
The
like on the boat when it was
sinking.
sinking?
Yes.
Well, no, what I'm saying is so the Olympic was the ship that was on the voyage, right?
Uh-huh.
And so the Titanic would still be in like the shop in the garage.
Oh,
And
you're
so
talking
when the
like
Olymp
inside the garage while it's still waiting to be sent out, right?
yeah, so the Titanic has not been used at all yet. The Olympic has sunk. It's totally possible that the government just kind of gave the Titanic a new paint job before they decided to use it.
Yeah, I can see that. But also, I have an idea about the wreck itself. Like, think about it, it's far underwater, nobody's really going there. What if, hypothetically, there's some sort of experiment there that we might not know about, this is going to seem completely bogus. But
I
if you're
mean, we're
still
making a
listening,
podcast
I
about
mean,
bogus, so
good point.
we're making a podcast about potentially bogus theories. Everything we say could possibly be bogus.
Anyway, to the people who are still sticking with us and still listening, thank you so
We
much.
thank
This
you.
is such a hard conversation to follow.
I mean, we've been all over the place. So if you've kept track of this conversation, congratulations. I give you a virtual prize.
Ah, yes. Where were we again?
We were talking about experimentation.
Yeah, on the
On
ship itself. Because I remember there was this one thing a while back, I want to say 2018 or 2016. Don't quote me on that. I have no clue about time anymore. It's just all weird now. But
that's a
anyway,
conversation for another time.
it is. But anyway, I remember there was an article and a lot of videos floating around about pieces of the Titanic that are floating up that could be just chalked up to erosion and everything,
Hmm.
or it might be just bait.
Okay. See, so I actually taking your experimentation theory, what if they are just using or was using the Titanic to like experiment with new ideas, right? Like playing around with new ideas of how to create better ships, right?
Yeah.
And so what if like that's what the Titanic was used for
I
and they
mean, good
used it
point,
essentially as a test
actually.
vehicle.
If
And
we really think
so
about the technological advancement right after the Titanic, with all the safety and everything, it's definitely possible that the Titanic was A, used as a lesson, and B, used as a pure experiment.
I I think there was definitely a huge technology just surge around then that I think a lot of people have said is why we've got better ships and all that. But it's also possible that, you know, if the Olympic is the ship that sunk, the government could be using the Titanic as like, what if we play around with this for the hull? Would this sink? Is it too heavy? Um, to right,
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
it's definitely an idea.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so out of the theories that we've put out on the table so far, which do you think is your favorite, and then which do you think is the most likely to have happened?
We're talking to the viewers or me?
I'm talking to you. Although viewers, feel free to
All right.
answer that question in the comments.
If anything, I would say my favorite theory is that the Titanic is still currently being used today. Honestly, it's kind of cool to think about, actually.
What would you say your favorite theory is that the Titanic is being used as today?
Probably experimentation and such.
Okay, and then what do you think is the most plausible theory?
The most plausible is that they were just trying to get rid of the Olympic because it was a damaged
Okay.
ship.
I think my favorite is actually the one that we just talked about the using the Titanic as an experimentation for advancements in shipbuilding technology.
Hmm.
And then I think the most plausible is that the not the Olympic is probably that the Titanic is, I don't know. See, I feel like all of them definitely have their like that I feel like that's a thing. I feel like for sure the Titanic would have to be in some form of government hands. I think for sure.
Hmm. Because that's like a
Um,
lot of material that could still be used.
mhm. I think it's prop. It's I think I am gonna have to agree with your favorite theory. Actually, I think it's the most plausible Titanic would be used for illegal testing.
Hmm.
Right, like you could be performing super inhumane experiments in international waters, right? Like
Huh?
it's not technically under one country's jurisdiction, so how do you, right? So I feel like there could be a little loophole there of like figuring out how to do inhumane experiments.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's been recorded dangerous experiments in, well, actually everywhere, if you really think about it. Then in that case, why is America any different?
I mean, for sure. I feel like to get uh, please please don't give me hate for this, but I do feel like 90% of advancements are going to come from inhumane methods, right?
Honestly, some of the fastest ways to get progress are ways that aren't exactly the best or the safest.
Like the we advanced so much in technology from World War One and World War Two
Hmm.
because we had to be better than our opponents. We had to be better than them.
Hmm.
And
And
so our
think about the
technology
Cold
had
War
to
and
be
the
better.
space race.
Yeah, and the Cold War and the space race. I feel like those are a little bit more legal than the world
Good point. I
wars.
mean, you got a point there. But
Um, so
basically, yeah.
I just kind of feel like a lot of the big technology advancements are going to come from inhumane methods.
Also, if
And
we
it's,
really look at the event on the timeline, wasn't it like right after the First World War?
um, I believe the First World War ended, ending of World War One. World War One ended on July 28th, 1914. So it would have happened 2 years after. No,
The
it
sinking
ended in
happened 2 years
1918.
before the
No,
end.
no, no. No, the sinking happened 2 years before it started. It started on July 28th,
Or,
1914, and ended
uh,
November 8th, 1918. I misread that.
okay, little note to the viewers. Keep in mind, I am not versed in history, at least not well. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, please.
Take everything all of us say every second on this episode with a grain of salt because
Yes.
we're, I mean, we're literally just talking about possible theories based on limited evidence.
Hmm. Later
Ex-
on, these will be a little bit more organized with more information and research.
like we said, this is sort of our pilot, and we're just kind of playing around with it.
We're
Oh,
just
that gives
spitballing.
that hold up.
What's up?
Hold up. I just have brainwave genius right here. Brainwave genius.
Spit it out.
So so it came after the word pilot, right?
Hmm.
What year did we get really good aircraft? Like roughly, give me just like a time frame of when you think we started getting like good airplanes.
The year of the first commercial flight. Oh, the first commercial flight was January 1st, 1914.
Which would be 2 years after the sinking of the Titanic. I think it's totally plausible that they could be using the Titanic for plane tech. I know it sounds kind of weird. I'm going to take a ship and fly it,
Holy crud.
but hear me out. Hear me out. So they could have just used it for like experiments, even just like if I'm going to play with this sort of G-force and this metal, like I think this could totally be filed under like laboratory/experiments, just experimenting for new plane tech. And I
Yeah,
think the most widely accepted theory is that we got better planes due to World War One, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like yeah, we needed better planes for that, but I feel
It was
like
partially maybe World War One, but I think, yeah, there might be a lot of it coming from the Titanic.
it sounds quite far fetched if I just say yes, a boat was used to create planes.
But if you really think about it, the technology isn't too different.
I
Both
it's
dealing with forces of drag and, well, buoyancy/lift, you know what I mean?
mhm. I mean I
Both have to
yeah.
work with similar but not the same dynamics where you have to be able to cut through the air with a plane, having to cut through the water with a boat. Kind of see
Okay,
where we're going with this?
saying the technology isn't quite that different feels like a bit of a stretch to me,
Yeah, I know, I know.
but I'm not saying that they used
It's not
the
the
Titanic.
technology, more like the principles.
I'm not so much saying is that like they took the Titanic and did what like the original boat theory if they got better boat tech from the Titanic. I'm saying like a laboratory theory, right?
Hmm.
Like with our biological experiments. I'm saying they could have done stuff like that. Um,
Oh, yeah,
and
now I see what
and
you're saying. Now I feel like an idiot.
yeah, and the other thing that I think is possible is helicarriers. I don't know when our first helicarrier came out, but I'm willing to bet that it was after the sinking of the Titanic. It's possible that we use the Titanic for working with technology like that, landing planes in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, and it even says here that the first commercial flight was from from the United States.
Shocking. The country that has a ship that was fake sunk. Oh my, English is hard. So the country that had a fake sinking of a ship gets the first commercial airline.
Very snazzy. Now, if y'all liked this episode, just make sure to tell us. And also, we do have a Discord. It's going to be listed in the description. So if you ever want any other theories covered, just say it there. We have a chat for it. Anyway, thank you. I'm Silver Songbird.
I'm Silent Swords. This is goodbye for now.